Tonight, the governor's moratorium on evictions is going to come to an end, and we know there's a significant backlog at the 36th District Court of legal proceedings. And we are going to do everything we can to slow the onrush. We do not want folks displaced from their homes if there's any way that we can help it. And so today, we're really pleased that another $6 million in tenant assistance has been added to the funds, bringing to $11 million with the support of the governor and the state legislature, with the HAND network, with Southwest Counseling Solutions, and the Department of Housing and Revitalization. Here's basically what's going to happen. Starting tomorrow, don't call today because phone isn't up yet, but starting tomorrow, you can call 866-313-2520 or go to DetroitEvictionHelp.com starting tomorrow. We will get you two resources. United Community Housing Coalition has got lawyers for you if the landlord is evicting you in a way that is legally inappropriate. We'll get good lawyers for you. You do have to pay what you can afford to pay, but there are also programs that will help pay off parts of your back rent, because the landlords, we can't just say to the landlords, you stay in the house and they don't get any rent. Many of these landlords have got mortgage payments, they've got their own responsibilities. So we don't solve this problem by just stopping payments to landlords, but we've got assistance that can help make those payments to the landlords, can help you deal with your arrearage so that you can stay in those houses. We are working very hard right now. In fact, there's a group at a city council, and we are hopeful that we are going to get this neighborhood bond issue on the ballot this November, which will help create 8,000 more housing units in the city of Detroit by rehabbing the houses in the neighborhoods. We are going to do everything we can to create a city where people have enough options that you aren't pushed out of your homes. But right now, we want to deal with the immediate end of the moratorium. And the man who's just done tremendous work on this, pulling together all of these agencies, is the head of our Housing and Revitalization Department, Donald Renscher, and Donald will take you through the details of what you need to know.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, for that introduction. So, again, we're extremely proud. The mayor provided the phone number, 866-313-2520. Again, please call tomorrow. You can call today and leave a message, and they will reply to your message. But tomorrow we'll have live individuals and attorneys who will be responding to your phone calls. Also, if you don't want to be on hold, we think the average time to be on hold would probably about 10 to 15 minutes. We also encourage you to visit DetroitEvictionHelp.com, where you can fill out an intake form, and an attorney will also be calling you back. Again, extremely proud of the program. Not only are you provided legal counsel and representation in the courtroom if you're facing eviction, but rental arrearage, as the mayor had just stated, and also some wraparound service for relocation services if a final agreement or settlement cannot be met with your landlord. So we're extremely proud of this program. We were here probably a month ago when we went through all the CARES funding that the city of Detroit received from HUD and announced that $5.1 million would be going to UCHC's eviction assistance program. Extremely pleased to see $6.4 million in additional money, so $11.5 million to help Detroiters stay in their home. It is vitally important during this time that we address housing instability, especially during a pandemic. So extremely proud of this this funding and this program. Also would like to give thank yous to the governor's office, HAND, and Southwest Counseling Solutions, but I'm particularly proud of UCHC and their partners, Lakeshore Legal Aid and Michigan Legal Services, to run this program. They've been running it for years, and we are able to provide them additional funding for more capacity to take on the influx of Detroiters who will probably need this help. And so the state funding Again, that's for people who are up to 100% AMI for a family of four. That's around $70,000. The City of Detroit funding is HUD funding, so there's an 80% AMI cap. But I encourage anybody who is facing eviction or receives a notice to quit to call the number or fill out the intake form because we will provide that assistance to you. And again, just extremely proud of the program, and I'll pass it back to you, Mayor.
So thank you, Donald. So we continue to have an extraordinarily positive record in fighting COVID. We had the second week in a row where we had only one death in this city. And Detroit continues to be the national standard. But the economic fallout is what we have to address now. And it's really hard to start focusing on where you're going to get your job if you have to continue to move. So we're going to do everything we can to keep you in place. One of the other inequities that's been exposed by the COVID crisis is something that is now starting to get to be more talked about, more understood, and that's the digital divide, the access to high-speed internet services. When the internet came out, there was all this promise, and I'm a great believer that talent is spread evenly across this country, that what is not spread evenly is opportunity. And the promise of the internet was that somebody who was poorer, somebody who was in a rural area could get access to the same kind of education and information as anyone else. And the internet has the promise to reduce inequality in this country. And if you look at the black-white gaps in income, in poverty rates, in unemployment rates, in business startups, the internet has the chance to start to level that. But what's happened in practice is exactly the opposite. The wealthier families got high-speed internet, and the poorer families got either slow internet or no internet at all. And what does that mean? It means the kids in school who had the most advantage just got even a greater advantage over the kids in the lower income districts. People who had good career options just got more options. And we saw this when, at the start of COVID, before the governor issued her order suspending schools, the first schools that shut down voluntarily were West Bloomfield, Birmingham, Grosse Pointe, Ann Arbor, because they were already teaching in part in the classroom and on the laptops, and their students were very well versed in going home and using their laptops and continuing their education at night, whereas in the city of Detroit, not only were our teachers not trained in it, but most of our students didn't actually have either the laptop, or if they did, didn't have the high-speed connection at home. Our corporate leadership stepped up in an enormous way, and the laptops, the 50,000 laptops, are starting to come to the students as well as the connectivity. But we have one organization that has gone above and beyond, and about a month ago, 9 of the largest CEOs in this city stood up and made a commitment to try to fight systemic racism in this country. And each of them, it's interesting, are taking their own paths and making enormous contributions. But Jay Farner and Dan Gilbert, from the beginning, looked at this and said, this is not right, that we need to make sure that every Detroiter has an opportunity for that job, for that training, for that a chance to attend college on an internet connection. And so when the Rocket Mortgage looked like it was going to get canceled, Jay Farner stepped in and said, not only are we going to run it, we're going to run it in Detroit in a way that benefits this city. And he's here to make a very special announcement. So let me turn it over to the CEO of Quicken Loans, Jay Farner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and well said. That's exactly, as we looked at some of the effects of COVID, in particular, that recognition that the digital divide was real and was having a great impact hit us all. As Dan and I were talking about it, we were happy to support DTE and Skillman with the tablets and laptops, but we thought we could do more. And so as we thought about the Rocket Mortgage Classic and the impact it could have or start having, because we think there's so much more than just that event, around the digital divide, we got excited. And so we launched an initiative called Changing the Course to address the nearly 30% of households here in the city that don't have broadband access. There are nearly 40% of Detroit residents that have cell phone access but don't have a data plan, and so they can't do the telemedicine that's so important right now. They can't do education. They can't look for jobs, and so we need to make a change, and that's what we're working on. And so I want to thank all of the team members that helped put a successful Rocket Mortgage Classic together. It was one of the first that were done without fans, but I think probably one of the most impactful events we've ever sponsored. And we had golfers like Bubba Watson and Jason Day step up, host a special event the Wednesday of the Classic. And I'm proud to announce that we believe, as we approach January and look at all the funds that we've raised, we were proud last year at $1.2 million, but this year we believe that we will raise over $2 million in the Rocket Mortgage Classic that will be put towards ending the digital divide here in our city. And as I mentioned, this is just a start. We're going to continue pressing forward on this initiative, collecting data to understand who doesn't have access, figuring out neighborhood hubs where we can create access points, and partner with the city and others, including the United Way, who will help us. And so I want to take a moment here and thank and introduce Dr. Hudson, who's the president and CEO of the United Way, who's helping us on this journey.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for having me here today. This is really such a monumental opportunity for our families here in Detroit. United Way, we're here to serve the most basic needs for our families. And in Detroit, we issued a report 2 years back that assessed our families' ability to meet their most basic needs. And in Detroit, 74% of our families are struggling to meet those needs. We're talking about housing and food and healthcare, childcare. Technology is a part of that. It really is a critical need for our communities in 2020. It can't be an afterthought. It can't be a nice to have. It truly is a must have. And so this Connect 313 partnership is really mission critical for us as we think about how we're going to move through this pandemic and beyond, how we're going to continue to thrive as a community, as a city. We take for granted having access. You know, all of us are sitting up here, we have phones. I was able to print out this speech today and my printer at home without too many difficulties. We take it for granted. There are a lot of people in our community that don't have this. And so this partnership, this investment in our community is right on time. It's essential to make sure that Detroit is on top for the right reasons, and that we have the strategies and the resources necessary for our families to be able to thrive and move forward. This partnership is really essential, and why we are so proud to be partners, not only as fiduciaries or as the grant makers, but also as thought partners as we think about all of the resources that are necessary, the digital literacy, the connectivity resources, the devices that are so critical, making sure that all of our students, our families, our seniors have access. We are reimagining our whole world right now, our schools, our businesses, just how we function on a day-to-day basis. And the key to all of that, making sure that engine continues to run, is technology. And so very excited about this announcement that Jay just shared with us today. Proud to be partners, looking forward to this long-term commitment. This is not an episode. This is not a one-time announcement or partnership. We're invested in making sure that every family has access by 2024, and that's getting closer and closer by the day. And so expect to hear a lot about this, and we're going to need everyone's help in making sure that our neighborhoods are connected, that our individuals have what they need to be able to thrive. So thank you for having me here today, and just looking forward to bringing connectivity to all of our families.
So thank you, Doctor. And we hired Beth Niblick, our IT director, who I think is the envy of the rest of the country. And the very first thing when she started in 2014, she said, I want to start an initiative in city government to end the digital divide, that it shouldn't, the IT department shouldn't just make the computers work in the city, which by itself was a miracle that she got that done. She said, I want to create opportunity. And the very first person that she hired to reduce the digital divide was a young man by the name of Garland Gilchrist. And he came in and made quite an impression. And we're certainly very proud of the lieutenant governor and what he's gone on to. And replacing Garland Gilchrist wasn't easy, but Beth went out and recruited a young man you're about to hear from by the name of Joshua Edmonds. And when I look at what's happened in the last year, I think all of us feel before it's all said and done, we have an individual here who is going to match the accomplishments of his predecessor. And so to talk about what the city of Detroit is doing right now to try to get some equality, Joshua Edmonds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you everybody else on the stage. One of the things that when we began talking about Connect 313, I want to be very, very clear what differentiates us from most other cities is the fact that we didn't look at the pandemic and say, oh, now we need to start focusing on the digital divide. The thing that separates Detroit is that we were focusing on the digital divide because it was the right thing to do. And we didn't need a crisis to motivate us. And so when we began talking about Connect 313 last year, we were saying, okay, how do we make Detroit the national model for digital inclusion? And the big reason why we were going with that was because we knew that looking at other cities, their issues were incongruent to ours. And so we knew that we needed to take a resident-focused, a community-driven, public-private partnership operationalized model to really drive this forward. And so then insert Connect 313. Connect 313, the mission is to establish means for all Detroiters to have access to quality devices, internet connectivity, technical support, and digital literacy and resources for improved learning, employment, and well-being. And earlier this year, I had the distinct honor to testify in front of Congress on the matter of digital equity. And that congressional hearing was special because we were the only city invited to testify. And I think that's a testament to the local leadership in Detroit that, quite frankly, I believe that we have an excess, and I don't want to get rid of that, but it's a definite positive thing that we have, and it's advantageous over the rest. And so when we get into specifics around what this investment means from Quicken Loans, when we're starting talking about data services, one of the big challenges for digital inclusion is that if we, the city, don't own the internet, well, then it's really hard for us to collect that information, which then translates to it being difficult for us to diagnose where we need to be. And so us placing a higher emphasis on data collection, that's us operating under an auspice of transparency and accountability, knowing that we're going to make impact. And so when we speak with confidence about eradicating the digital divide by 2024, we're backed with facts on that one. For neighborhood technology hubs, us placing an emphasis on technology hubs saying that we are thankful for the leadership of our local organizations who have been stewarding this cause for so long by way of computer labs and training, and we want to enhance those existing sites, but in addition, provide additional funding to stand up where needed. We're looking at community ambassadors, looking at empowering our existing community members to help tell this narrative beyond our ability to do so. Along with storytelling and media, us focusing on the storytelling. Oftentimes, whenever we are talking about the digital divide, it's a very segmented conversation, but it doesn't have to be. I've long believed that digital inclusion is a 24/7 conversation, and there's a whole lot of actors doing work. And so us placing an emphasis on telling the story of digital inclusion, that's something for all of us. And for the Connect 313 Fund, a place where we can begin supporting initiatives in our community and beyond, and a centralized way of ensuring that folks who need the funding to continue doing the work are getting that. And lastly, the Connect 313 Task Force. This is something where it goes all the way back to last year. The first week in October, we were very fortunate to hold our first Digital Inclusion Summit. We had over 200 residents show up to that, and it was incredible seeing the response and us saying that anyone who has a vested interest in bridging Detroit's digital divide, we're open for collaboration. And I feel good by saying that July 30th at 2 p.m. we'll be having another convening. For folks who want to know more about that, you can head over to connect313.org. At the very bottom, you can drop your email, and I'll be sure to send you additional information as we talk a little bit more in depth and a little bit nuanced about what we're doing. And so I'm thankful for the opportunity and what I'm seeing here. And I know definitively, as the federal government continues to check in on the work that we're doing here, And as we continue to host our conversations, we're moving in the right direction. And so I'm thankful for the leadership from the mayor, from Quicken Loans, and definitely United Way, because we're making a difference here, and I'm really proud to be in Detroit making this happen. So I'll turn this back over to the mayor.
All right, well, there's going to be hearing a lot from the leadership that's going to be coming out of Quicken and United Way and the city of Detroit. But this is a significant step forward, and Jay, to you and everybody in your organization, thank you.
Absolutely.
Very generous contribution. We've talked before about the need to do a memorial at some point. We've lost more than 1,400 of our neighbors to COVID-19, and while that number has dropped dramatically in recent weeks, the families of those 1,400 victims couldn't have receptions at funeral homes. They couldn't have family hour, and were very limited what they could do at the cemetery. And so we have said from the beginning that we are going to, when things ease up, do something that's appropriate to acknowledge those we lost, and also to acknowledge all the first responders who put their lives on the line day in and day out. It wasn't that long ago that you had police officers responding every day, even though COVID was spreading through our department. You had health workers at hospitals who didn't have enough protective equipment, and they just reused the masks, and they just went right back to work to help the residents of our community who needed it. And so there was only one person who could put together a memorial that's appropriate enough. So we are going to declare August 31st as Detroit's Memorial Day, and we'll start the events the evening of August 30th and run through August 31st, and to lay out our plans for that memorial and let you know how, if you had someone in your family, someone you cared about, that should be remembered, how you can participate with that. I'll turn it over to Rochelle Riley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I want to take a minute to thank United Way and Quicken Loans for all that you do, not just for my Department of Arts and Culture, but for the city. We so appreciate you. Our nation is experiencing a tragedy. We are being battered by death and enveloped by the fight to keep each other safe. Our nation has not taken a day, even a moment, to acknowledge the pain of the global pandemic that has forever changed our lives. But our city, our great Detroit, is going to take a moment. Imagine needing 1,500 funerals but not being able to have more than 10 people in a church. We have found a way. The mayor has declared August 31st Detroit Memorial Day, which we hope to celebrate and use to honor literally our heroes, those who are gone and those who are still fighting. But this is a 2-day citywide commemoration. As he said, we're going to honor those that we've lost, but we're also going to pay tribute to everyone who's still fighting. And we're talking about the first responders, we're talking about the front lines, we're talking about the medical centers, the community centers, food banks, churches, and I want to take a moment to particularly thank our team at City Hall, who have been feeding hundreds of thousands of people and finding housing for folks. We have made responding to this pandemic something that has set a precedent for cities around the country, and I'm very proud of that. The Memorial Steering Committee will ask Mayor Mike Duggan to do this, and he has already done it. And those current committee members, as you can see, are Tanya Allen, Neil Barclay, Deidre Bounds, Cher Connor, who is a resident and a great mom, Cynthia Ford, Cynthia Johnson, Tony Michaels from the Parade Company, Jimmy Settles, Arn Tellum, Robin Terry, the great Gary Torgow, who has never stepped away from a challenge to help our city, and Carla Walker Miller. We're going to have other members who will be joining, but this is the initial committee right here who is working to do this. At 5 p.m. on Sunday, August 30th, there are going to be simultaneous memorials in each of our city districts. We are planning these with the city council members, who are all very excited about it. They are doing what their residents want for their intimate celebrations and commemorations, and we're working with those. And we're going to videotape each of those so that anyone who cannot be there or does not want to be out in public can still see it. And then on Monday morning, that's when we're going to have the memorial drive on Belle Isle. At 7 a.m. that Monday, Belle Isle will be closed, and the city will prepare for mourners to be able to drive around the entire island past stakes featuring photographs of each of our victims placed 6 feet apart. At 8:45 a.m., we're going to ask every Southeast Michigan resident, everybody in the city, every organization, every church to ring bells for 15 minutes to honor our lost souls. And then at 9 a.m., that's when the drive will begin. We won't have cars parking. The memorial is going to be open so people can go back to take photographs, to release balloons. But we want people to drive and imagine that it's a spirit cruise rather than a dream cruise, to be able to celebrate those spirits. Every driver is going to be asked to turn their radio to the same single station that's going to be playing a playlist that Motown is creating for us. And that's going to go on until 4 p.m. when we're going to make sure Belle Isle remains closed in time for the fireworks. This is a very special thing for those of us who have lost people, because we want to make sure we have a chance to take one last look at them. And that's what we'll be doing. And each of the family members of these folks will get these enlarged photographs. They're huge. They'll be staked in the ground, and they'll be all around the entire island. Every time I see that photograph of Marlo Stoudemire, it's hard to do anything else. We want to thank our sponsors. There's going to be a list announced next week. Several of our committee members are sponsors. And we want to thank the staff that's working on this. When the mayor asked me to do this, to create a way to honor our lost souls, the first thing I did was partner with the Department of Neighborhoods, but because they're more connected with our residents than anybody at City Hall. But we're asking every department at City Hall to participate. This is all hands on deck. We're going to be looking for 500 volunteers. We're going to be working with Michigan State Police and the Detroit Police, and we're going to have the funds to pay their overtime. And we also are going to make sure that even though we're starting this day with something that is a chance to mourn and a chance to say goodbye, we're going to end it with this huge fireworks show to make sure that we end the day in a way that makes us feel uplifted. If you have any questions about what we're doing, you can send emails to me, to my odd email address at City Hall, rileyrowe@detroitmi.gov. We're going to be reaching out to families across the city to get photographs. We want to use the photographs that you'd like us to use to remember your loved ones. And I am so proud to be able to do this. It's the greatest thing I've been asked to do for my city, for our loved ones, and for our fellow Detroiters. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, with that, we'll take questions. Come, you're the only reporter in town that has time to come down here.
You know, nobody wants to spend time with me. Everybody
Okay.
else has got
All
a
right.
better option, I guess. But I appreciate the opportunity to ask you guys some questions. I'm Al Elric, Detroit Free Press. First question, I guess the IT department only hiring tall guys? Is that how that works? I may have to put a resume in. When we talk about digital hubs, will those be like Wi-Fi hotspots? And if so, what provisions will be put there so that when people use those with confidential information that they'll be secure?
So right now, that's the conversation we're having specifically around Wi-Fi and even computers, the standards. And so we've been having conversations with the state on cybersecurity and how that we can leverage that to make sure that we're not only current with what we need, but also future focused. And so I'll say that we are considering that and thinking through it right now. Can't give you a definitive answer on that, but I will say that that is one of the areas where we're looking at standardizing to making sure that not one entity or one neighborhood is getting a superior experience than another.
And is it fair to say these will be like hotspots?
I think it's fair to say that it's going to use hotspot technology with respect to the seamless connection to Wi-Fi. I would say that the experience within the neighborhood technology hub, like actual inside the building, I don't think the Wi-Fi experience is going to differ. However, I think that each of the hubs are going to have their own specific flavor to them, but I don't think that's going to be a detriment to the performance of those.
Okay.
So it is fair to say hotspot, but not, yeah.
Okay. And so in that sense, is it something that anybody passing through that area can use, or will it be available only to people who actually live in the broadcast area?
So ideally, it would be in the broadcast area. I think that what happens if we are going to have people who are driving through, most likely they're going to be able to pick up the signal pretty quickly. And then as soon as they get outside that broadcast area, whatever that might be, if there's another area, they can kind of daisy chain and find the way. But that's not what it's designed for. It's much more designed, no different than where we have libraries where people are able to go to those spots. And if you happen to be in the proximity, you're able to pick it up. But it's not designed for people who are passing by. It's much more for people who are proximate to that area.
Okay, and do we have a target date where people who need to get some of the quality devices and want to be able to access that network, that they can sort of set on their calendar and say that by such and such a date, I can expect this to be here?
No, I think what we're looking at right now are the existing deployments. So we're still doing the deployments for the public schools around the Connected Futures Initiative. We're also doing some for GDYT, getting those youth covered. I think at this point, because we're in the midst of those deployments, it's a little bit harder for us to say how everyone else goes. I definitely know that we don't want to just be connecting kids. This is an initiative where we're focused on the families. But I think we're taking things one day at a time here. And so I can't give you an exact date where we're saying, hey, everybody's going to get this, but it's definitely a focus area that we won't feel safe bridging the digital divide unless everyone has that.
Okay, and is it possible to maybe use a seasonal estimate that by fall, by winter, by such and such a time?
I don't think so. The reason being, everybody right now and everybody who's trying to work on this issue, we're all going to the same source for technology. So as a result, for example, earlier this year, we were looking at trying to get everybody hotspots. And that proved to be dangerous when we realized that, one, Detroit's not a hotspot manufacturer, and a lot of these telecommunication organizations are based in other cities. And so as everybody in the United States is asking, oh, we all need hotspots, well, what did that do? They just said, okay, there are no more hotspots available. And so as a result, it's really hard for us to estimate on a hardware standpoint when people are going to get resources, because these are operating on timelines that we don't really have too much control over. I think that looking at the future, if we are able to say that we're able to ramp up and get much more technology, I think that's going to change things. But as it stands right now, having the conversation about people going back to school or still doing this distance learning, that's something where it kind of exacerbates the issue a bit more for us to say that the hardware part is hard to predict.
Okay, and does the plan envision making devices available to people as well as access to the internet?
Absolutely. It wouldn't make sense for us to try and push, because then we would just almost create another digital divide. And so it's like, no, we're going to punch this out the right way at the right time. And so one of the entities that is actually behind the scenes that Quicken also had made a separate investment for is an entity called Human IT. Human IT is an organization that we've been fundraising for quite some time, and unfortunately COVID kind of stopped them from being able to do their opening. But Human IT is a neighborhood-based organization where their whole role is to actually deploy technology to residents. And so what we discussed today is a larger ecosystem play, but there are definitely other elements that in the more nuanced July 30th call that's going to actually talk about how, if I'm a resident or if I'm an organization needing new technology, that's why we were adamant about getting Human IT at the onset. And so when I'm speaking with confidence on this stuff, it's because I know that there are operational elements that we were able to prioritize to say, hey, this is why I'm talking so confidently, because I know that we were already getting that organization and that entity that does that specifically.
Okay. And will those people be based out of existing city facilities, or will they have separate offices and new locations? Or
Oh, Human IT?
yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be in they haven't done their press release, so I'm not going to steal their thunder yet. But no, it's not going to be in a city facility, but it's definitely going to be in one of our neighborhoods. Yeah.
Okay.
Jay, are you ready to talk about that at all?
Well, the thing I would maybe point out that I think is important is the data collection. So there's a lot of efforts being made, but I still think visibility is the primary focus right now. We have to understand across the entire city who has what and what resources already exist. And I think our mission is to then link all of those resources together. So you're going to see the first big effort being that data collection, much like we did with the Blight Task Force, and really understanding what exists in the city, what people have, what people don't have. So I think that's a really important step. And Josh is talking about all the different elements that we'll be bringing together. but we've got to do that first collection step on the priority list.
So when you're talking about data collection, can you be a little more specific? Because there are people, including some of our undocumented residents, who are concerned about what data is being collected and who it's being shared with and what government's going to do with it.
But when I'm referencing data collection, I'm talking about who has internet access, who doesn't have internet access, who's got computers, who doesn't have computers, and so then we have a better understanding of where those hubs need to be placed and those sorts of things.
Yeah, we're not interested in personal information. There are sections of the city that do not have high-speed internet access.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing that we need to gather the information on.
Okay, so the city won't be capturing things like web histories and, okay, okay.
We're leaving that to the feds.
Okay, well, there's,
We don't have the bandwidth.
you know, we're all afraid of the deep state, so let's just get that out of the way. Okay, and Rochelle, in terms of volunteers and what's happening on the island, 500 volunteers, will those folks be going to work before the event or during the event? And how do you make sure that everybody's properly spaced and masked and all those things?
They're going to be double masked and socially distanced around the island so that they can provide Kleenex, they can make sure that there's no problems with the photos, but nobody's going to be near anybody else. And we want so many so that nobody's out there all day. So you will make a shift on your post, and when it's done, then you leave.
So those volunteers you will want day of, not in preparation or anything like that? So you're
Day
looking for
of.
people who can work on the,
Just that day.
okay. And how do people who are interested in either volunteering or providing you the names and photos of people they'd like to be remembered, who do they reach out to?
They reach out to me. We're going to be making an announcement about the hotline and where to send the photos, probably by middle of the week next week.
Okay,
But there will be a very specific email address, or if somebody needs us to get it in some other way, because again, we're talking about the digital divide and we don't want anybody to feel left out. If I got to go pick up a picture, and I haven't been going out much, as the mayor will tell you, I'll go get it. But we just want to make sure that they feel comfortable getting us the photos that they want us to use.
okay. So we'll be able to tell people where to go to participate
Absolutely.
in a little while then?
Yes.
So next week. So we're not quite ready to talk about that yet. Okay. I'm terrible with math. I know the mayor's a data guy. When we're looking at income eligibility for that aid for people who may be facing eviction, I see the 100% of AMI to qualify for state money. If you're at 80% of AMI, I'm assuming you can make more money and qualify, or is that less money to qualify?
80% is less money.
Okay, okay. So,
So 100% of AMI is 100% of the average income, 80% is,
okay, so the $70,000 for a family of four, that's basically the maximum that you can make to qualify for this program?
right.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you for coming.